Okay, so our next thing to do, so this one's going to be a video about setting up a simple project with a HTML, CSS, and JavaScript file. So to do that, the first thing we're going to want to do is make a new folder. So we'll say new folder. We'll call this JS Project 1. And then what we're going to do is we'll right click on it. If you're on Windows 10, you'll have open with Visual Studio Code. If you're on Windows 11, you'll probably have to do show more options and then open with code here. We'll say yes to trusting the authors because we're the authors. And we'll close the welcome screen. Now we've got this workspace of this JS Project 1. We can make a new file called index.html. And the way we made that file was we clicked this little new file button here. And then we typed in the name of the file we wanted to call it. But now we're going to put an exclamation point and press Tab and Control S. What that's going to do, it's going to write out the boilerplate for a basic HTML page. Notice how we got doc type, we've got the language, we've got some head with some metadata here. Then we've got the body. The body is where anything that's rendered gets seen. So for now, we're just going to put H1 with time to code inside it and save that. Now, if you've followed the previous videos of installing things, we should have basically an extension called Live Server installed. If you don't, search for Live Server and install it. Once you've done so, you'll have a little Go Live button here when you're on your HTML page. So if we click this Go Live button, it opens a new sort of browser window with our actual code from what we did. So if I move this code here over a little bit out of the way so we can actually see both of these things, then what we can do is we can kind of edit the code and have it kind of show it real time. So if I said something else here, save it, it updates. So we kind of get to see the changes that we make. Now, there's a few more bits that we want to set up this with. We want to have two more files. We want another file called index.css. This one's going to hold the different styles. So let's imagine we know this is a H1. So if I said like H1 and said color red and save it, it does nothing. And the reason is, if we take a look in our index, there's no link here. It's not linking the two files together in any way. So what we can do is we can add a link. We want a CSS link, and we need to point it to the specific style sheet. So we want index.css and save that. Notice how as soon as I saved that, it changed this text here to red, because in the index CSS, I've said if it's H1, I want it to have a color of red. If I change that to another color, for instance, like blue, and save it, we end up with the text being blue. So that's just a general sort of idea of it linked up. That just shows that it's linked. That's fine. I'm getting rid of that CSS because we don't want that right now. So now that we've got the CSS set up and linked, we need to make another sort of thing here instead of a H1. We're going to be using something called Canvas. So we need a canvas, and we want to give it a few things. We want to give it an ID. We'll just call it pixel canvas. We'll give it a width. Let's say 800. Oops. We'll give it a height. Let's say 600. Okay. And that should be good enough for a start. Let's save that. Notice how now there's something else has disappeared, but we now have a scroll bar because we have this invisible canvas that we can't see, but it's got a width of 800 and a height of 600. So let's make it so we can see it. Let's say, what we're going to call it. It had an ID of pixel canvas. And we want to say background color. Let's say black. Save that. Also now, we take a look and we scroll over, we've got pretty much just a black background. I'd say it's not taking up the whole screen because it's got like 800 by 600. If I make it bigger, we can see the 800 by 600 here. So now we have a canvas and we can draw to a canvas, but we'll be doing that using JavaScript. So for that, we're going to need to go in and link up some JavaScript. So we've got 2 files. We need another file for the actual JavaScript. So we'll do it index.js. Now, for now, we'll just do an alert of I'm working and save that. Notice how nothing happens here at the moment. That's because we haven't linked in our actual JavaScript code into our HTML file. For that, we need something similar to what we did with the CSS. But instead of just the CSS link, we want a script tag. Yeah. Now, this script tag is going to have a source. And the source is going to be index.js. If I just save that, you'll notice now it says I'm working. Okay. But it happens before we render. And we don't want it to happen before rendering. So what we can do here is we can add defer and save that. Now, the alert actually happened before rendering because that always kind of takes precedence. But in general, most of the JavaScript code is not going to happen until it's finished rendering. The only thing it does is like UI, things like that. So we can get rid of that for a moment. Now, what we can do now is we can hook into this canvas. So we have a reference to this canvas via our JavaScript code. So I can say const canvas equals. Now, this whole page is called the document. So we want to access the document. So document. Then we can use dot notation and do things with the document. It has a lot of different things. What we want to do is want to get an element by its ID. And when I say ID, it's whatever ID we have given it in this little area here. So the ID is this pixel canvas. So I'm going to copy that. And when we actually do this, we just need a string and put that pixel canvas in there. Nothing seems to have changed yet. That's fine. But all it means is we have access to this exact element and we can reference it. Once we've got our reference to that element, we also now need to get a reference to the inside of it as such, sort of like it's like a drawing space. So we call that a context. So I'm going to say const ctx, save me typing in context every time, equals canvas dot get context. Now, the type of context we want is a 2-dimensional context. So we can just say 2D. And that gives us access to like X and Y coordinates, width and height, and so on and so forth. So now that we've got a context, we can draw to that context. So we can do all sorts of different things with that. But for now, I'm just going to save that. What we could do is make some sort of a fill style so we know how it's filled. So maybe say, let's say ctx.fill style. And let's say RGB and give it some red, green, blue values. Let's say 255, 255, 255. That means full red, full green, full blue, which equals white. Okay, notice how I've saved that and nothing seems to have happened. That's because we haven't drew anything. What we could do, we could try and draw some sort of a filled rectangle. So we could say ctx dot fill rect, passing it an x and y coordinate. Let's say 10, well, 20, 20, and give it 10 pixel by 10 pixels width and height, and save that. So we now technically should have an actual style setup. The only problem is that RGB didn't seem to do that. And the reason is because we need to actually set it and not run it. So we can do it equals and get rid of that. Now, I believe this takes in a string of some sort. So we may have to actually turn this into a string. And there we go. So there's a few kind of caveats there. So we had to take run a function as such to gain the red, green, blue values. Our fill style, rather than being a callable object, it was a property. So we had to set it to this RGB value, but it takes in a string based upon what it is, and there it is, the string. So now we've got RGB values 255, 255, 255, which equals white. We've got our filled rectangle starting at 20 pixels in and 20 pixels down, and of size 10. I could change that to like size 100 by 100 and save that, and we get a 100 by 100 rectangle. It doesn't have to be a square. You could literally make it wide and sort of like short. So we can kind of decide what we want to do with that. For our purposes, though, I really want us to be able to put pixels on the screen. So what we can do is we can utilize like a fill rect of 1 by 1 for a single pixel. Notice that little tiny dot there. But now we could turn this into a function to draw pixels onto a screen. So we could have something like a put pixel function. And the way we'd make a function is type in a keyword called function. Yeah. Give it a name. So put pixel. Choose some possible inputs. We'll give it an X and a Y coordinate for now. And then give it some curly braces for the body of that function. So now what we can do, we can pull this and bring it up here. I'm doing that by hovering over, holding down Alt and pressing the up arrow key to move it up, or the down arrow key to move it down. Now, notice how we got this hard-coded 2020. We can actually take in X here and Y here. Notice how it's disappeared, and that's because we haven't called this function yet. So now we could call put pixel, giving it 10, 10, saving it. Notice how we got a little dot at 10, 10 now. If I move that to 10, 100, it moves down here in the Y direction. I'm going to keep it at 10, 10. And then we can make a few of these. We could like have a line. So we can just go, okay, let's copy paste. Now change this to like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and save that. And notice how we've got this little tiny line. We could keep going and keep going more and more. I mean, this feels a little bit redundant, but this is how it draws. Our little line's got a little bit longer. Imagine if we wanted a line like 100 across. That means we're going to have to do literally 100 of these calls. This is where doing something like looping over something would be nice, maybe. Or we could just have something, maybe a shape that we draw specifically. So we've got a line there. Let's say that we make a line giving it some functionality. Let's say we say X is equal to 10. Yeah. Y is equal to 10. So we now have where we're putting something. So we could say something like x minus 1. No, let's say minus 2. And y. Let's get rid of some of these. And then let's start drawing a little crosshairs. So if I copy this and paste it, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, actually, let's just do the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 first of the y direction. So it's just us putting some dots on the screen. So 2, and we go like 3, 4, 5, 6. Save that. It's now drew the left side of a little reticle. So let's copy this, paste it down here, and swap out the minuses for a plus. Yeah. So I'm just going to delete that and change it to a plus, 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 and save. And so we've got this little space in the middle and a left and right. I want to do a similar thing, but in the y direction. So I want to do like put pixel. X is going to be the static, and then y minus 2. Then we'll do the same sort of thing. We'll do a minus 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we'll change that to 3, 4, 5, and 6. Save that. And so we've got the top part of a little cross. Now we're going to do the bottom part by just copying these and changing those minuses to a plus. Save that. Now we've got a little crosshairs. Now, if we ever change X and Y, it means we can move that crosshairs about. We can say, okay, I want it to be at 2010. Save. It's moved. I want it to be at 2020. It's moved again. Say I want it to be at the middle-ish. Let's say, what's it? It's 800 by 600. So I'm just going to say like 400 by 300. Now it's technically in the middle of that canvas. So we've got little crosshairs in the middle. So we could turn this into a function itself. We could go, okay, well, I could make this be a function of draw crosshair. Yeah. So we want this to be a function. So I'll just say function draw crosshair that maybe takes in an X and Y. Now I can put all of this inside that function, and it's going to be local X and Y of whatever we pass to that function. I'd say it's not drew now because we're not drawing anything. So now what we can do is we can run that draw crosshair, passing it like 20, 30, save. I think it does that. So imagine we want a load of crosshairs. We can put a few of them down. Say, I want one at 50, 30. I want one at 20, 50. Got a few crosshairs. I want one at like, let's say, 100, 70, 100. So we've got a bunch of crosshairs about the place. So we can kind of control how we draw things and what we draw using just a bunch of these things in a certain set of sort of like ways how we want it. So that's kind of what's set up. We don't have to have this draw crosshair. I've just decided to randomly make it. It was just one of those. But at least we want a bare minimum of put pixel, some sort of context, and hooking into the canvas. So notice how now we have nothing drew. That's fine. We have the ability to draw a crosshair. We have the ability to put a pixel on the screen. I think that's plenty for the first sort of setup video here to get us ready to start working. I think we're going to move forward with maybe doing some looping and iterations and some other sort of variables and stuff. And we've talked now about functions. And remember, the function has a keyword saying function, has the name of the function, some parentheses, and whatever we want to take in as local variables for that function. It then has curly braces, and anything inside the curly braces is the body of the function. And then variables, we've got these const canvas. That's technically a variable, but it's what we call a constant. So once it's made once, we don't expect it to ever change. Same with the context. Another way of doing variables would be let. And let would give us like, let's say let x equals 0 and let y equals 0. Those would be two variables that can be varied. If we gave them the const, we wouldn't be allowed to vary them. So that's the difference. We've got these constants and we've got these variables. And variables are just this box to store some data in. So if I was to say now, actually, let's make that be the middle of the screen, the XY for now. So 400 and 300. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, I want to draw my reticle or draw my, what do we call it? Crosshair. So say draw crosshair at X, Y, and that's utilizing those X and Y that we got and created here. And then the local XY is whatever's been passed in. So it just happens to be the same. So we'll save that. Now we've got our reticle drawn. And I think that's enough. Hopefully that's enough for an explanation of what functions are, what our variables are, and what constants are. And hopefully you've got it enough so that we can build out this thing. We'll probably do more stuff on making more functions, move on to doing loops, use more variables and constants along the way. And we'll start sort of building out some sort of a scene and do more shapes and more pictures and things to start off with, just to get used to doing all these different little bits until we move forward with making a more robust application. Okay, I'll see you in the next one.